Hi, everyone. My name is Dmytro Rodenko. I'm the founder of SaaS Founders Community, and I'm here to welcome Isaac Sacolick. Hi, Isaac.
Hi.
Isaac is a best-selling author in digital transformation. He is CIO and Chief Digital Trailblazer at StarCIO. He has 10 years of experience in startups and 10 years experience on the enterprise side. So that's why I'm really interested to know the view, let's say the vision of the Isaac. What's really going on in the market right now? How should we handle with all this, let's say, shocking economy? And what future can we expect as a entrepreneurs? So let's start from that. What do you think? What are the reasons of the shocks that economy has right now?
Well, I think we're on a decade plus journey right now of organizations realizing that they need technology, customer experiences, data analytics, now AI as a strategic advantage. Um, it's running every part of our business from sales all the way down to back offices. I don't know of a single company, including government, not putting out customer facing technologies. So it's ingrained in everything that we're doing. But if you look historically, the companies that have really thrived in delivering technology are technology companies and large enterprise, some industries like financial services. And now, every company, whether it's manufacturing, construction, government, all need to be able to build applications, all need to be able to test large language models and see what that's going to do for their organization. They're all trying to build some efficiencies in what they're doing. And that's why technology is interesting. We need to find more efficient ways to enable those capabilities across a wider range of organizations, not just large enterprise. I do a lot of work with medium-sized companies, with startups. We're trying to build new capabilities out, and I think that's the opportunity now. Is like, how do we enable more companies to use technology in ways that are innovative and operationally resilient for themselves?
Okay. How can we do it? So before, I would say maybe 3 to 5 years ago, it was like skyrocketing. So it was like a decade of high growth. So you just say, okay, I'm doing new fancy technology. I utilize it in a certain vertical, and people, let's say, throw you to like, shut up and take my money. So it was easy to do. Now the situation has changed, and we are the digital entrepreneurs. So we know we understand the technology, we understand the benefits of applying it to certain verticals. What should we, as a digital entrepreneurs, do in this situation of, let's say, of a certain lack of financing and in the situation of uncertain demand?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I do a lot of advisory with the buy side, and I tell them, look, your transformation goals are going to evolve significantly every 2 years. Like you said, 2018 we were focused on growth, and 20 we were focused on a pandemic response. In 2022 we were focused on efficiencies, and now 24 we're trying to figure out how do we actually deliver value from generative AI. And the best answer for SaaS founders is going back to basics, right? You understand technology, you understand the art of the possible. The way you scale any business is understanding customer needs, understanding where they can provide value, and doing it really, really fast and doing it really, really efficient. I think what's changed a little bit, particularly over the last couple of years, is how you're meeting buyers, how you're interfacing with them, the number of people that are involved in a buying decision, particularly as you get trying to sell to larger organizations. It's not just I'm selling to a CMO or I'm selling to a CIO. You're selling to their staff and a collection of people who are interested in innovation or interested in data science or have a particular set of customer use cases or are concerned about security and compliance factors. So you have a broad set of people that you have to sell to. And the most important thing is really understanding who your buyer is, what your value proposition is, and then how do you checkbox your response to all these other folks who are involved in the buying process.
Okay, okay. So you suggest us to concentrate on value, do it fast, and understand, let's say, the right approach to the people who are decision makers. Okay, that's good. That sounds fair. Okay, that's good. Also, you mentioned AI. What do you think? So there are different concepts on the AI. Some people say, okay, it's the next Skynet. It will, let's say, it will run, it will ruin the world that we are living right now. It's one opposite side. So that's why we should fight back with the AI. So it's dangerous, right? Another polarity, I would say, people say, no, AI will provide us with a basic income. So we don't have to work. Robots will work for us, and we have to just work on like leisure, on different, let's say, fun experience. Let's say we'll enhance our creativity and other stuff. What's your position on that? Where are you between this polarity? What's let's say, what do you think about that? What's the future of AI generally?
I'm a practical and pragmatist when it comes to AI and any technology. I actually studied neural networks back in the 90s in grad school, so I have a pretty deep background in how they work inside and how they operate. And you're seeing a lot of experimentation right now and a lot of exploration. There's a lot of productivity it's driving. It's enabling us to code a little bit more efficiently. It's enabling marketers to develop content a lot more efficiently. But I don't think it's going to take over the world. I think what we're seeing here is a continual evolution. What we understand today, and types of problems that we're putting people against, we can consider how technology continues to enable us to do more innovation around it and do it more efficiently. And generative AI in particular is the next sort of level of growth in that capability. Maybe I'm not writing SQL anymore. Maybe I'm writing a natural language query to be able to do that. Maybe I'm not summarizing things like I used to. I'm using an AI to be able to do that. But you know what? If you take, for example, flying an airplane, right? Most of flying an airplane is automated, right? But how many of us really want to get into cockpits that are fully automated without a human in there to handle difficult situations, to handle unknowns? We've seen in the last 6 months just a good number of those. Some of them people created, and some of them outside factors are created. And that's the nature of how we run things, right? There are places where we can use technology to enhance what we're doing. And there's places where we want human decisions, human ingenuity, human thinking in the loop. And I think we're going to continually see that. I think there's another couple of factors that we'll see sort of limit our growth in AI that particular entrepreneurs have to consider. One of them is power and energy. I mean, the cost of compute to run these AI models is significant. We're seeing, the biggest technology companies being able to make those investments. Smaller companies, you talk about SaaS, we got to be able to leverage those and be careful about what we're building ourselves and what we're leveraging from other people. And the byproduct of those energy factors is the underlying costs to run and leverage models are going to go up, right? And, to be an end user of a copilot isn't going to be cheap or free forever. And so those are things that we have to consider. And that really goes back to, are we applying them into real important use cases that our customers are going to value and ultimately invest in when they're working with us?
Okay, very good things. But how to deal with the digital inequality? Because we are the small and medium businesses. Yeah, we are the entrepreneurs. We don't have resources. We are very numerous one. There are millions of us all over the world, right? But there are,
Mm-hmm.
I would say, a dozen, even less vendors that concentrate all AI powers and all AI decisions and all, let's say, access to the AI in their hands. And we become even more dependent because, for example, if you utilize email, of course you can use Gmail, you can use Microsoft, you can use different tools for that. But now you're more and more limited because you don't have, let's say, several hundreds of providers that can provide you a certain level of the technology. With AI, I expect it to be even more strict. For example, if you want to get the results, you'll have maybe not a dozen, but maybe just a couple of providers. How can we deal with this risk? Because if we rely with our business model too much on a certain vendors, breaking up with these vendors will break our business down. What do you think about that? How can we mitigate these risks, for example, if it is
Yeah,
possible, actually?
yeah, it's difficult. I mean, you know, if I look back to my days when I was doing startups, right, we basically had relational databases, and you were choosing between four, right? Much simpler back then: Oracle, Microsoft, Postgres, or MySQL. Those were basically the choices that you had, and then you had a few other things to go after. And then once you sort of picked your flavor, then you were left with a fundamental problem. Am I going to build an abstraction layer, between me and my service provider, so that I could defend if I need to move off and use another platform? And am I going to use proprietary capabilities, right? Am I going to stay SQL 92 dialect, or am I going to use Oracle text or some other text engine built into that? I think some of those kind of technology questions still exist for the entrepreneur today, about how you're abstracting, because that costs money when you build those things in. It's a little easier today, but then also, when does the capability of your vendor give you a strategic advantage where you're going to take that upfront cost, you're going to take that upfront risk, leverage it, and realize that at some point you might have to back out of that, and go move off of somewhere else. So I think that's one thing that I think about. I think, for, the companies of the sizes that you're talking about, I really do think the more important thing to consider is growth, and how
Mm-hmm.
fast you're growing. You know, uh, any kind of technology choices that you're doing today, number one, have to enable you to get to speed of market. I can do things faster, easier, not necessarily cheaper, okay, but faster and easier. Number two, I would say, is more supportable, right? I'm going to build something today, and then, when you hit that sort of growth mark, which I have been through, that growth from 40 to 400 people, that growth from a million to 10 million to 100 million, whatever currency you're in, your operating model changes significantly. And what you find is you don't have the time to go fix the things from the previous generation. That's why even SaaS companies end up with tech debt. And that's why SaaS companies end up with operational issues, is because we know they're there. We're cutting corners in our, stage one, and then we hit stage two, and now we have a whole new another set of issues. But we got to go back and say, like 9 out of 10 SaaS companies just don't make it. So I focus on, how do we make things easy for our end customers? How do we make it easier to onboard a customer into our environment? How do we make it easy for them to understand what our value proposition is, what we're actually solving for? How do we solve some of the friction points? If I look at I look at a lot of SaaS solutions, and I look at them, and if I don't understand what they do from their homepage, we got a problem. If I can't download or sign up for a trial and figure out how to use the thing in a couple of hours, I know we have a problem. And, these are not easy things to solve for. I mean, there's a reason why a good number of SaaS companies struggle with this. They're not easy. What terminology you're using, what you're giving away for free, how do you set up the user experience so that's easy? Um, but those are the things I think SaaS companies need to think about if they're going to enable that growth stage later on.
Absolutely. That's absolutely true. It's like forgetting about your old skin. So you're getting older, and you just forget let's say, all your technology. You forget your technological depth, every stuff. You just build it from scratch because of the new layer, because of the new capacities, etc. Very nice. Okay, in our country, we have a very specific situation. I'm not talking about the war. Everybody knows about that. So we don't speak about that. We have a lot of really talented technologically gifted people who are well educated, who are well aware of the modern technologies, etc. And there is a certain lack of entrepreneurial I don't know, background, I would say, right? So that's why they tend to sell their hours as providers of offshore software development services because they understand this model much easier. Then to convert their knowledge, to convert the experience to the products, to the SaaS products, for example, whatever. What would you advise them? What, let's say, first steps would you advise them? Would you sell them? How would you sell them situation, guys? Please transfer your hours to your products. What's your opinion on that?
Well, look, you can go through a bottom up, from services to capabilities to productizing, and you may get lucky that way. You may find a product, a technology capability that ends up finding a market. In many situations, those approaches don't pan out very well. The approach needs to be, you got to learn an industry, learn a market, learn a use case. I saw this a lot with my Indian service providers, right? They took technologies they were doing for 9 to 29 customers and creating an abstraction, productizing it. They all of a sudden had a proprietary content management system or a proprietary CRM, and they would come to me as a buyer. I was a CIO at the time, and I'd look at this and say, okay, you know how to create a workflow around a database, but that's not exactly the problem I'm trying to solve for. Right, here are my problems in customer relationship management. Here are my problems in managing content. And there was a mismatch, right? They didn't actually do their homework and figure out what their potential buyers were looking for, what my choices were at the time in terms of things I could either build or buy to be able to enable this. And so look, I think build hourly is a good way to understand and learn how to deliver services. I think when you start productizing it, you're building components or capabilities of components. But at some point, you need to take kind of a pull back and take a step backward and say, we're going to adopt product management disciplines. We're going to understand what customers are doing. We're going to go research what their buying options are. We're going to project what their needs are going to look like 2, 3, 4 years down the road, because not everybody's going to be able to build a generative AI capability. So what does that impact? How does that impact this market? If you're in manufacturing, how does sustainability and IoT impact those markets, right? What does that look like? If you're in financial services, regulations are changing every single year, right? How does that impact those markets? You got to take that sort of top-down, market-driven approach and saying, this is where I think customers are going to have need in the future. So let's start building those capabilities and testing them quickly, right? Let's go find some customers to go test with. I think that's really the bigger problem is, when you're that small, finding a customer to be able to say, yeah, I'm going to take a bet and partner with you and see how that evaluates and how that works. I think that's actually the bigger challenge when you start going down the path of productizing.
So as far as I understand, not everybody can move to that stage. So a part of people will be happy with delivering services hours for a lifetime, and they will be in that model. But only a part of people will move to the next step, like understanding and let's say productizing or let's say making products of their services, right?
I think that's yeah. I mean, history shows that to be true,
Oh,
and
okay.
history also shows that a market-driven approach, in the United States, venture-backed, right? It's still 1 in 10, end up surviving that first round, and that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be sustainable businesses going 5 to 10 years down the road. So, I mean, this is the world of entrepreneurship. I mean, you make an investment, it takes a year or 2 years to be able to get to a point where you have a viable product. Okay.
Yeah.
And you're always wondering to yourself, is this viable product something I've fallen in love in, I have passion for? Is it really going to be a sustainable way to make a living? And if it's not, do I pivot? Do I start over from scratch? That's the world you live in. I did it for 10 years, and at the time I said, look, if I'm going to do this again, I better move to California. I better join the Silicon Valley rush and get out of New York if I'm going to make this a business. And I pivoted. I became a CIO. And now I do education programs and I write books and I do things like that. So you got to have passion in what you're doing. You have to look at it as a learning experience.
Mhm.
But like I think the most universal thing is really understand who you're targeting as a customer, as a market, as a business, and you know if you start doing that well, some good things come out of that.
Yeah, okay, okay. Yeah, I get it. Some founders they feel some fatigue during that process, so they are getting tired. They are start losing their, let's say, energy. What would you suggest them to do in that case?
Look, I see that in every group I work with. I tell companies, you're always going to be transforming, right? That's the new normal, right? We're going to
Okay.
get a release. We're going to get a release out, and if you're a startup, maybe that release is in a week, and if you're an enterprise, maybe it's over 2 months, and uh, you know, customer expectations don't stop with that release. You have to like jump into capturing feedback and understanding what's working, what's not working, quickly address issues that you didn't anticipate, and then on to that next release. That's the world we live in, right? And those
Absolutely.
time durations, those cadences are shrinking, and the customer expectations are increasing. So there's a couple things that you can do here. All right. First is you do have to find real points as a group and real points as individuals to come up for air and take a breath, right? When are you going to celebrate with your team? If you don't celebrate with your team now, trust me, the next day, business is going to come after you for something else that they want from you. If you found some quick win, make sure you go celebrate with your team. Okay,
Okay.
find a period of time where people can come up for the air. Learn something new, try some experimentation. Every company has a lighter period of time where you can say, look, we're going to use this time to do certain things that we can't normally do. So
Mhm.
advertise that, say, look, we're using this time to go do something different. I think that's really important. I think it's what the last 4 or 5 years have taught us is, um, don't just look at this at a company or a team level, look at this at an individual level, right?
Mhm.
Isaac is going through a difficult period for whatever reason. uh, we're working as an agile team. Who can help him with some of his responsibilities so that he could spend more time with family, whatever it is. So I think we have to be really cognizant of individual needs around this. I think as companies grow, you mentioned my books. I wrote Digital Trailblazer for
Mhm.
companies that recognize they need more people to step up and learn how to run transformation programs, learn how to run change management, learn how to understand voice of customer, develop a technology roadmap, partner with companies around their technology execution plans. What I didn't anticipate is, there's a lot of startups going through this, right? You go from like that team again of 4 to 40 to 400. Guess what you need to be able to do that? You need practices, you need leadership, you need ways of scaling what you're doing. You need to continue to innovate and scale, but you're also now bringing in, when do we address technical debt? When is an operational issue a fire? And when is it a defect that we can fix in the next release? When do we spend some more time automating something that's taking too much time? How do we improve our data models so that we can get better data of what we're doing? I need trailblazers to come in and say, look, I'm going to make some better decisions over people's time because we're always transforming.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got an idea. If we speak about tribalization, does it mean that, please correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe add something about that, that the world we are living is changing from the strict vertical structures like companies, governments, countries, let's say unions of countries, to more horizontal, I would say, tribes. And that's the trend we are trying to use to transform the world. Is that correct? Or you have another meaning of that?
I mean, I think you could make a pretty good argument that that's the the path we should be going on. There's
Ah,
incredible political factors and wealth factors that become detractors against those kinds of things happening. And those are things that are out of our control to really make change and drive impact with. So my quick answer to that is probably not in our lifetime. you know, uh,
why? Why do you think so? We see the internet. Internet, it was like a vertical structure, but now it's absolutely horizontal. And more communities, which are tribes actually, they arise, and the weight of the communities become more powerful. They are, let's say, they are transforming clients, they are transforming processes, they are transforming technologies. So I'm more optimistic regarding that. So I really see that the verticals are really strong, but the horizontals, they appear, they appeared maybe 20 years or 40 years ago, and they are getting more and more and stronger. What do you think of that?
Look, it's what 2024, so 30 years of the internet's ability to democratize information, and we're nowhere near there yet, right? It's possible.
Okay.
It certainly has elevated the possibility of many countries participating, many people participating in this digital economy, whatever words you want to use. Um, but if you take any industry, right? Um, is there an identity standard out there, right? Most fundamental piece of information. Who is Isaac Sacolick, right? Is there a fundamental piece of information out there that's universal that says, I am who I am? And yet we don't have it. We have fractions of it and we have pieces of it in some countries ahead of others around it. But there's tremendous forces, again, between wealth and government, people who own power, to slow some of those things down because it may not be in their best interest to see that kind of value happening. In the US, we have companies that try to sell identity as a service, right? If you create an identity standard that's utopian across governments, not going to work for them after that. So I
What do you mean on selling identities? So it means that you mean digital twin, or you mean the real identity?
real identity, right? So I pay, $100 so I can get
Okay.
through the airport line faster, right? And as a company
Okay.
that provides that service,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
And lots of people use it to save time and energy and make the experience go a little bit faster, right? We know the technology exists between retinal scanning, between fingerprinting, and other, government could have an answer in this country with all the money that we have to simplify this for people, and yet we don't do it, right?
Uh-huh. And what should change? Well, that's a very good thing because it's pivotal
Right.
for civilization, I would think. What should change in the world for, let's say, for this pivot?
You know, um, I think I think we challenge it by doing small things.
Okay.
Okay, it's a lot of small things. I think when a software company, for example, decides to take part of what they're doing and open sources it, or contributes to the open source community, right? I think those are very positive things. Okay. I think when there's a story this week about finding a defect in the SSH parameters that a software developer found. And, there's an entire economic model around that. And, he chose not to go do that, right? He shared it. He got the issue addressed. He went back to his day job to program Postgres. I mean, I think that things like that bring us closer to the world that you're describing, where
Mm-hmm.
we're learning, we're supporting an economic model, but we're also sharing information. It's how I actually started writing. My first blog posts back in 2005 were about, I'm learning how to do something that's not terribly proprietary. My first blog post was how to write an application log.
Okay.
and so that you can actually find defects in your code. And I said, it's not particularly proprietary. I'm just going to put a blog post out there and say, here's how I do that. This is what I put into my log files. And my blog continued that. The blog is blogs.starcio.com. It's been around since 2005. I have 500 posts on it. And it's from this notion of, if it's not part of my commercial programming, and even sometimes when it is, I'm going to offer it to the world and let people get smarter and use my information to apply it in different ways. And at some point we do have to think about how to create a commercial endeavor over our efforts. But look, I think the bigger challenge right now, going back to something you had said earlier, right? Who are we building our products and services for? And I think there's a group of companies that offer products and services to make the best companies more efficient and smarter, the best talent more productive in what they're doing. And I look back and say there's an entire world of smaller and medium-sized businesses that are underserved. There's a whole number of developers coming out of universities today that don't have all the expertise in software development, don't have all the expertise in journalism or in marketing. And, how does AI help them climb that ladder more efficiently, become more productive, to become more smarter than they ever were, and contribute to society a little bit faster? I think those are the more interesting problems for us to
Mhm.
solve for today. And that's a wide opening playing field. I don't think anybody has all the answers around that. If you talk to folks saying, we're using Copilot, and I ask a lot of people around that. People using Copilot today are the experts that know how to ask a Copilot a question, get an answer, and evaluate the response, and then figure out how to plug it into the code base. Those are our experts, right? If I ask my son in graduate school how he's using Copilot, he doesn't know how to use it yet because he doesn't know how to ask the questions yet.
Okay. So I see your recommendation is to be open, to share with the things with the community, right? And to maybe to learn how to ask the right questions and to evaluate the answers.
I think that's a number one skill set, actually. If you look at my
Okay.
writing around this, is that, we prized people about knowing how to find the answers, right? I have expertise in A, B, C, and D. I'm a DevOps, cloud, whatever it is, expert. And when you come to me with a problem, I could say, do it on this cloud with these services, with this integration. And we priced people with having that right? Expertise. And now I'm saying, maybe we asked the wrong question. Okay. Did
Okay.
we ask, right? I can ask eventually AI to give me options. I asked an AI yesterday. This is interesting. I asked an AI yesterday. I said, here's 100 of my last blog posts. If you were rewriting, not the post, just the titles. And I said, if you were going to rebuild the information architecture of my blog, what would be the 7 categories I should focus on? And if I did that by hand, it would probably take me a few days, and I'd probably run it by 5 or 10 people, and I'd come back with an answer. And AI gave it to me in 3 seconds, right?
Yep.
And it gave me a very plausible, not only just grouping, but actually language around the grouping. I might just go public with it because it was that good, right? So, um, knowing what the right question to ask is far more important today than ever before. And knowing how to evaluate the answer is far more important. Knowing what the answer is actually is becoming less important.
Mhm. Okay, that's good. That's absolutely necessary, fundamental things. Let's get back maybe to more practical side. So the majority of the founders I'm facing, they are raising, let's say, from 500,000 to million to 2 millions. What are your suggestions right now? What should they focus on? Let's say right now, let's say what are, let's say, the top 5 or 7 steps they should focus on to keep their growth and to go faster to the next level.
Well, I'm very customer driven at this stage
Yeah. Okay.
of the company. I mean, I think that I think the debate inside the company needs to be, how do we put something out there that we can experiment with, right? That will give us indicators that we're heading down the right track. What can we put in front of people? And, if you only raised $100,000, you know, that might be a prototype. It might be a PowerPoint. It might be a discussion. And if I'm raising $1 million to $2 million, it needs to be something functional that really shows the value proposition, that maybe gets people excited, that maybe gets a partnership going with a group to say, hey, willing to hold hands with you around what you're trying to engineer over there. So, I'm looking for quick ways to validate what we're doing. And look, in some industries, that's a lot harder than others, right? If you say, look, I'm focusing on financial services and I'm doing large language models, and I got to work with terabytes of unstructured data, there's obviously some infrastructure that you have to have in place to be able to do this. If I'm doing something in healthcare, and I want to do this in the United States, and I have to have some regulatory approvals before I can do any experiment. I have a 2 or 3 year process before I even get to the point where I can truly experiment. So there's some relative boundaries here that we have to think about. But the sooner in that industry that I can go out and experiment and put something in front of people and see if it's working is what I'm focusing on at that $1 million to $2 million range.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I got an opinion from one investor. He told me, Dima, that product market fit is not actually what you showed to me. Product market fit is like to have 200 leads in your funnel and 20 signed contracts with a certain revenue. This is what the product market fit is. And I was shocked because, oh man, I've got a bench of LOIs and people told me, yes, I'm ready to go, but I'm still on the prototype stage. Can I get these
Well, no,
contracts on?
yeah, no, but there's an important stage before that, particularly for technology companies. And I see this early on. When you think about the word platform and set of capabilities, you really haven't figured out product market fit yet. You've figured out a suite of capabilities that may have different products with different markets, with different buyers, different end users. And you could see it very often in the web page of that company trying to market this. So trying to like figure out, knowing, look, I got one shot to showcase this technology. So am I going to showcase its security capabilities, its analytic and data capabilities, its like workflow or end user experience capabilities? And if you try to do all three of those on one page, you got a mess. And when I look
Sure.
at this and say, I have no idea what you're trying to do here. And what you're really trying to do in the end is experiment and figure out, okay, I've built a platform here. Where's the market around it? And is the security market going to scale faster than the experience of the data market? Is it going to be easier to sell to? It's not that they don't exist. It's just I need to be able to get to that 200 to 20. I got to figure out what's the easier path. And that goes back to experimenting, right?
Oh, okay.
Being able to get in front of 10 people, 3 in each market, and say, what are the barriers to sell to that person or to that group? What our offering is, what are their alternatives look like?
No, okay.
You got to learn that very quickly, and that's the hard part today, right? If you look at the data space, for example, if you were building a database technology 30 years ago, you're competing against 4 in the SQL space, and then this concept of NoSQL. Now, I get lost at looking at all the data platforms that are out there.
Okay. So as we speak about an ability to create good question, answer, to create, to initiate good questions, can you remember maybe some good questions that you've got from your clients the last time that talked to you, that impressed you? I gave you a new idea on the, let's say, on the world, what's going on, and that might be useful for our, let's say, subscribers.
Wow, that's a great question. The questions they're asking me is, usually from their world, from their perspective, looking at 6 or 12 months out, and they're projecting, you know, trying to bring together what I said was the value that we're delivering, what the product actually is, and then they're trying to anticipate what the impact is going to be there to their organization. So they're usually asking me, "Hey Isaac, if you bring in, your coaching and your learning programs around digital transformation, what's different about our world a year or two from now when we're starting to use your product and services?" And so now I'm forced to live in their world. I'm forced to learn at how they're servicing this today. And I say to them, look, you probably have a lot of consultants working with you right now doing the job that your team should be doing. You're probably spending a lot of money on skills development to learn specific technologies, but you probably don't have, and you might be doing a lot of learning programs with your HR to how elevate the skill set of your leaders. And what I'm doing is bringing those three together. So when you bring those three together, right, learning, coaching, capabilities program, you're probably going to have less consultants. Okay. You're probably going to have more tailored learning programs, and you're probably going to have leaders who can run programs internally better than they are today. That's my value proposition. But now articulating it into what's going to be the impact in that organization, what's going to change there. Okay.
Okay.
And that's what you have to be able to anticipate. And I'll give you a secret. You may get it wrong, right? Because you don't have a complete knowledge of what's running in the organization. You're going to learn through this. And they're going to say, well, we don't have consultants. Our
Uh-huh.
CEO fired all of those a long time ago,
Okay,
right?
okay.
Right. So you're never going to learn that unless you throw that dart against the board and say, I'm going to anticipate this from previous learning. And maybe I should ask that question, say, hey, do you have a lot of consultants around working with you before I go and make that assumption, right? So you have more time, you get to learn your audience, you can ask a question before giving it an answer. I think those are the things that entrepreneurs have to get good at.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's valuable. Okay. So I see that many people rely too much on technology, but they should also rely not on technology, but on a combination of technology, processes, and people. And just a as you told just right now, it's not only about the technology. It's
It's
about the
I'll tell you,
organizational structure.
it's almost never about the technology.
Never. Ah,
Almost
okay.
almost never. I mean, unless you are selling a technology for a technology buyer, right?
Uh-huh.
If you're selling another way to manage Kubernetes containers, or a way to do security around, packet sniffing and things like that. If you're doing things
Hmm.
like that, then it's clearly about the technology. I'm doing something more efficiently, smarter, faster, easier to use for a technology audience. They're going to benchmark me against some other technical capability. Yeah, that's a small niche of
Yeah, sure.
places you can sell technology to than the wider audience of everybody who needs technology. Everybody. So I'm focused here.
Okay, that's nice. So we should ask the right questions to ourselves. We should ask right questions to our clients, yeah, and help them to grow and to understand how these things evolve.
Yes.
Okay, I think for me it's absolutely awesome. I like the way you answer it and you give me some insights on the things I should really focus on, think more, because I think that the good conversation, the result of the good conversation are certain seeds of your future insights that are already in mind. And I really thank you for the conversation. So I think will share the link for Driving Digital and Digital Tribalizer in the description of the video for our readers, for our subscribers to know more about your approaches, about the things that you are talking about. And I think they are really valuable because people we work with, they are tech professionals. They are too much even in tech. They are less in people, they are less in processes.
I know. I
And
have a technology background. I mean,
yeah, absolutely. That's why we need to compensate it, let's say, to leverage it, I would say, and to make it more efficient, to make it live, and to make it more productive for the community, for the people, for the society, for the business as well.
Yeah, I would just tell your audience, my second book, Digital Trailblazer, will give you a pretty sizable flavor for that. It's all stories, and there's lessons learned at the end of every chapter, but it's all stories. So you're going to get, what's happening in U.S. companies as we're trying to adopt technologies and all the friction pain points that are in there. And then I run a coffee hour on LinkedIn every Friday. It's at 11 a.m. Eastern time. So I'm just about to get off and get
Okay,
on it.
sure.
We handle lots of different topics. Today, we're talking about interviewing and being able to interview digital trailblazers. So, that's a big change, right? How do you interview people in the face of all this technology that's out there, different ways of operating. Next week, we're going to talk about how do you speak to a board member,
Oh,
right? Okay.
nah.
And I have a pretty important guest on for that one. So we talk about some very difficult subjects that we're all trying to learn from. And I've got CIOs, I've got CEOs coming on there. It's a free on LinkedIn. It's called the Coffee with Digital Trailblazers. You can just look that up on LinkedIn or find me on LinkedIn. And it's free, and you should join and come and listen.
Absolutely. I think it's vital for us because due to technology, we are lucky to share the experience and get the knowledge from you and from people like you. So that's why I really thank you for your time. And I hope that
Thank
our
you.
subscribers will join, let's say, the conversation. Will take a lot of benefits out of that. We'll read the books and we'll be happy with that stuff. Isaac?
There's a shaking in my house that I can only describe as an earthquake. Um, I need to drop and figure out what this is.
Okay.
All
Good
right.
luck.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye
Yeah.
bye.
Have a good day. See you.
Thank you.
Good day. Yeah.